Hello and welcome to the Flipped Learning Remix podcast. This is the podcast that mixes cutting edge technology with learning. And we have the host, Troy Cockrum.
Hello.
Hi, Troy.
Hello.
And our guest tonight is Sarah Thomas. And I would really like Sarah to introduce herself and let us know what she does.
Right. Hi. Thank y'all.
Sarah.
Hi. Thank you so much to both of y'all for having me here tonight. My name is Sarah Thomas, as you said, and I am an educator in the DC metro area. I was working at the middle school level for the past several years, and I was teaching English as well as technology. I was also a technology liaison at our school, and I am a doctoral student at George Mason University. I'm also the founder of the Edmatch project.
And that's how we found you, Sarah.
Yes.
So we matched up somehow. So Sarah, we were kind of going to talk a little bit tonight about PLNs and sort of how you ended up involved in something called Edmatch. Maybe you can describe that to us.
Absolutely. Edmatch is a project that came about in September 2014, and the goal is to connect educators globally along similar areas of interest. So it came up very organically in a conversation. I was having a conversation with one of my friends who was at the time, I believe, a math specialist, and we were talking about gamification in math, and I had had a previous conversation with my cousin who's now living in Haiti, but he was a math teacher in New York several years back, and he had this elaborate gamification system. And I was saying, well, a lot of things that you're saying sound like my cousin, so maybe you all should get in contact and talk. And the idea kind of struck me. I was just like, is there anything out there that matches up educators globally? And I did a Twitter search, did a Google search. I couldn't find anything, so I said, hey, let's just go ahead and do this. So it was moonshot thinking, and from that, Edmatch was born.
And, so I've kind of stumbled across a website, edumatch.education, and I noticed you've got a map there, and you have a little bit of a description. You do have some other folks that are listed as founders. How did you find Craig and Rob?
Oh, I think that you're talking about the Uber Edu project. That is kind of something that we came up with together. It's independent of Edmatch, but it's definitely something that we all work together on, and we've kind of incorporated it as part of Edmatch. Okay. So what that is that people can go in and list their educational project, and it's a crowdsourced document. So if you submit an educational project, then the rule going by the honor system is that you tweet out 2 other ones that are on the list. So so it's kind of a crowdsourced document, and we've just kind of incorporated it as part of Edmatch. When we feature people of the day, then we also feature projects occasionally.
Maybe I should back up a little bit. So I guess I jumped way into it. So first of all, if I'm an educator and I'm interested in matching up with people globally, what do I need to do first with Edmatch?
On the Edmatch website, then there's a Google form that can get people started, and pretty much they would just go in and fill that out about different parts of their interest that they're interested in connecting with different people on. For example, if you're into gamification or coding, then there'll be areas where you can write that down. And then once that form is filled out, it goes to a master spreadsheet. Right now it has approximately 200 educators on there. So we've been, it's been a really great response in the few months that it has been up. And from that, then we just tweet out every day over a 24-hour period about different educators, and we try to match them up by doing search in the spreadsheet for similar interests.
Oh wow! So is that what I'm seeing here when it shows past Edmatchers? Those are folks that you've tweeted out their interests?
Absolutely, yeah, and the network is just amazing. Like, the network is what makes Edmatch. So definitely it's become more than just a spreadsheet. So it's become this huge community of learners. So right now we're about want to say connected to about 7,000, give or take, on Twitter. But in terms of the number of EduMatchers that we've had, I think that we've featured over 150 at this point, and our Voxer group is pretty large, and it's kind of spawned off into a podcast slash Twitter chat, and it's just amazing. We just had our very first EduMatch Ed Camp this past weekend.
So yeah, why don't you
Well,
elaborate a little bit?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So two EduMatchers, Tammy and Amanda, came to me with the idea of making an EduMatch Ed Camp. So we did that online through the MIT Unhangouts platform, and from that, then we had about 130 people sign up for it. So it was a really
Uh-oh. She'll probably come back. Troy, I know you were probably about ready to ask a question.
well, I was saying, and she said
So
that
she may join us back here in just a second.
yeah, I think she might be back now. Are you back now, Sarah?
Yeah, I am. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. Did my internet did I freeze?
You did freeze for a second. Yeah, it is.
Sorry about that.
So what I was just telling Joan is, my job. I work with. I'm an instructional coach in essence, and I tell my staff part of my job is developing relationships with companies, other educators, classrooms, whatever, and a lot of those relationships that I develop may never pan out for anything, but as soon as a teacher comes to me and says, I want to talk to a class in Brazil, I can say, in essence, let me go to my Rolodex, and I've developed relationships of people that I can connect to. And so I was going to ask you, how do you help those people develop those relationships? And one of them, I'm sure you will say, was the Ed Camp that you were telling us about.
Yeah, absolutely. The Ed Camp, it was just amazing. The response, the conversations that were being held. So it's all thanks to people who take part in the EduMatch project. In addition, we have that Voxer group that's pretty active, and I mean, it's just a great wealth of knowledge. Because I strongly believe that every educator is an expert in something. So when we all get together like that, then we can tap into each other, and it's just really been a wonderful experience just connecting with all of these wonderful people.
Do you have a specific, and you don't have to get real specific, but like a success story, like some teachers that met or even collaborated online, and it led to some wonderful thing in the classroom?
Absolutely. One of the things that we're currently working on is a global student hackathon that's going to be, yeah, thanks. So that's going to launch probably next month. We're kind of playing around with the date, but we're going to use the MIT Unhangouts platform again and try to bring students of the world together just to identify different problems that they may be having. And it's not going to be a hackathon in a pure sense of the word. Like, we're not necessarily going to have computer programmers, but taking students and kind of exposing them to this EdCamp-ish model and letting them talk through these problems and come up with an action plan to maybe better serve their communities, and having this going on an ongoing basis so that they can report back to each other, then I'm very excited about that particular prospect.
I love this concept that every teacher is an expert in something, um, and that's one thing I try to get my staff to realize, is that if we all embrace what we're an expert at, and we're all experts at different things, imagine how powerful our school would be, as opposed to if we're all just focused on one thing and not diversifying our expertise. So I like that concept that everybody can be an expert at something.
Right.
It's just a matter of getting the confidence to reach out and share that knowledge.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm kind of interested in that, in the idea that you've gone a little further with a personal learning network, and you've done this in you've done it in what we would consider a traditional way through Twitter, but you're talking now about Voxer, and you were saying you were using sort of a chat and podcast format. Can you talk a little bit about like PLNs in general and how you're branching out and changing it in your own way?
Absolutely, and I think that's a great question. We're having a great pre-show dialogue where you were sharing a lot of great ideas regarding this, and I definitely have to co-sign that and agree that a lot of times, just kind of rehashing the conversation. A lot of times, people do get connected, and sometimes they don't know where to go from there. So one of the things that we try to do with Edmatch is that we try to be like the now what, like you're connected, so now what? And I think that with the different I think Bloom's taxonomy, I don't want to don't want to necessarily put that on PLNs, but I think that when we start using connections, and we start being able to access those higher levels, when we become more purposeful at it, and we can start creating together. We can start creating, collaborating when we make those connections initially. So after we make the initial connections, then it's time to start, building those relationships, building that trust, and then being able to build something together. So.
Well, we talked before the show, and I was saying how we've kind of moved past the stage where teachers just didn't use social media at all. They were nervous, that didn't make sense to them. To now they're willing to get on Twitter or Facebook or maybe a few, maybe even Voxer. That's unusual, but but you hit it. It's the now what. It's now I'm inundated, and yes, I'm connected to educators, but it's almost too much information. It's hard to digest, and even I'd sit down with Twitter and I get frustrated because I get involved in a little chat and then I realize that some of these other tweets are also interesting and I can't keep focused, and it keeps me bouncing around a little bit. I really like the idea that you're moving past that. And we need to continue to move on, because I don't think that's a sustainable model for a lot of people to just say, okay, connect with thousands of people and then pay attention. That's too hard.
Right.
So I really appreciate that. Now, Voxer, tell me, how does that work for you as far as having conversations? Do you like that as a tool?
Oh, I love Voxer. It's probably my favorite tool right now. Just because you can go so much more in depth than you can with Twitter, and you actually get that voice aspect, which you don't really get on Twitter, and you don't have a character count that kind of keeps you in. They actually give you a lot of space to talk, like up to 15 minutes. And I mean, I would never take that, but it's a really, really cool tool. And there are a few people that I connected with in the PLN, Heather Gawk and Karen Corbell, and we put together a spreadsheet of different Voxer groups. So there's like a form that people can fill out, and then it'll just kind of put your information on there. So right now there's a directory of, I don't know how many are on there now because it kind of runs itself. So I want to say maybe 40. So there's different Voxer groups for almost anything out there, educational, and they range from from the very narrow to the very broad. So I mean, there's just so many great conversations that are being had there, and it's just a fantastic tool.
How would I go find a group? Would I just get on Voxer and search?
The way that you would do it, you would have to have the contact of a pro user. So in the spreadsheet, then for all the different groups, and there's a pro user on there, and all you have to do is go on Voxer and search that pro user and say, can you add me to such and such a group? And they'll do it, and it's very cool. I wish that there was a way to search within the app, but they keep on having these great updates, so hopefully one day they'll add that part.
They may.
And I I was talking to an educator the other day because I sometimes forget to check into Voxer. I turned off the notifications, and so then I'll go in and I'll have 80 messages in one of my chats. And she said, I just listened to them on my commute to and from work. She goes, I just set my phone next to me and hit play, and just instead of listening to the radio, I listen to all these different, and then she'll stop occasionally and respond to a message here and there. And that's it's once you engage in it, you'll find the time to really engage and make connections through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. I listen on my commute as well. I used to listen to CDs to try to learn Spanish, like when I was stuck in traffic, but now it's all Voxer, and that's all I really listen to.
I've also thought you could do like maybe a student podcast or something where they record the whole thing through Voxer, and then you just strip away the audio and you have a podcast. And I haven't done it with students yet, but I've thought it's certainly a possibility, a way for students to record without having to be in the same place at the same time.
That is so true. There's a guy called named Jorge. I can't remember his last name right now, but he has Voxcast, I believe is the name of his podcast. It's not with students, but it is with different educators. And yeah, we were just talking about it in the Edmatch Voxer group today. So there are just so many great implications of it.
And then I'll also promote Faith Plunkett. We had on our podcast a few weeks back. I just saw her tweet out she's doing a book study through Voxer, and I thought that was an interesting way to use Voxer and connect with educators as well, and to keep the discussion going, because I've been in some chats that they just go stagnant and nobody's contributing to them, and that's, a book study would be one way to get dialogue continually happening.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It seems sort of old school now, but sharing out, just this last week, Alice Keeler shared out a Google spreadsheet, and it was wonderful how everybody was willing to take a line and not interrupt anybody else's, and there's this enormous spreadsheet of ideas on how to start the school year that I just happened to stumble into. She just, opened it up on Twitter, I think it was, and it was great. So there's ways that you can do something that's not very high tech, and I should say Google is high tech, but it's not very high tech for 2015, and be able to share with a group of people quickly and contribute. So I hate for people to get nervous when they hear a new tool and say, oh, I don't want another thing. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you look back at what you have already and that you are accomplished at, and you can use it for other purposes.
Absolutely. It helps to make our lives easier.
Mm-hmm. I was laughing that you brought up Bloom's taxonomy, because it's the one thing, along with educators, that you can reference and everybody knows what you're talking about. I've been trying to reference the SAMR model quite a bit, and what you're doing is really at the augmentation level at this point, because you're taking what a PLN is and you're transforming it and making it something completely unthinkable, and that's cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So I'm going to just kind of steer it a little bit, because I know you're kind of a gamification guru as well. Do you want to say a little bit about what you do in that field?
Sure, absolutely. From the gamification aspect, then we've been doing it in my class for about 3 years now, and I have to say that hands down, I have learned the most from my PLN. I started doing it on my own. I kind of stumbled across Class Dojo and started using that the very first year. But for the second year, which was, I guess, the 2013-2014 school year, then there was an amazing workshop done in our county by Aaron Smith and Selena Ward with Barbara Leadoff. and they just introduced us to the concept of gamification and really just bringing in student voice and choice into assignments, because this was for the middle school tech teachers. And while we do have a curriculum, we're not necessarily married to it as long as we hit the standards. So they showed us a system for just setting up different assignments and letting the kids choose what they were interested in. And I was just like, it just blew my mind. Like that was just a game changer for me. And I went to the workshop like a lot of us do, and I just kind of stuck it in my back pocket. And it wasn't until I woke up one morning at about 2 o'clock in the morning. I had a class. I at the time I was teaching grades 3 through 8 for technology, and or something like that. And a lot of the kids I had over and over and over. So understandably, the 8th graders, by the time they got to me, they were kind of bored at that particular time. So I remember that workshop, and I was just like, okay, well, we can't continue like this. So let me just go ahead and try this concept that we learned about. And it just changed everything. Like all of a sudden, it was like a brand new class in front of me. They were just so hype over it, and they were so excited, and I just loved it. So we kept that model going, and then the following year at Google Teacher Academy, I met Chris Aviles, Tech Up Teacher on Twitter, and he talked about his model that he used with his English language arts class. And since I teach both subjects, then I decided to try his English model with my English classes. That was like yet another game changer. It brought about the item shop. It brought about like guilds, so many different things. So yeah, I'm just a huge gamification fan at this point.
Yeah, the reason I bring that up, anything like that, a buzzword like gamification, or it could be coding, it could be anything that's kind of coming in education. Tell us, like, if I'm new and I'm a teacher and I'm like, gosh, that sounds really interesting. I'd like to start building a PLN around that. What would you do? How would you start that process?
That's a great question. I would say definitely look up the Twitter chats that are being held. Cyberman has a great one. I believe his site is cyberman.com and /chats.html, I think is the link. And there are Twitter chats listed there for almost any topic under the sun. And you can find so many people around that area of interest. And just participating in the Twitter chats, definitely Voxer groups if there happens to be one for that topic. Going to face-to-face conferences or online professional learning, webinars, things of that nature. Just pretty much throwing yourself into the mix. And of course, Edmatch is here to support whenever possible. So anyone who's seeking to kind of build their PLN, if they fill out the Person of the Day form, then we'll definitely look for that hashtag and look for others who have also identified those hashtags.
And probably any person that you've just dropped their name, you might want to look up them on Twitter. Because
absolutely.
That's one of the things that I have learned. When you go to a conference, everybody who's one of the lead teachers or a presenter or keynote, I'm like, oh, and I instantly go find them everywhere and try to figure out, well, who do they follow and what do they connect to? And that kind of builds it quickly. Yes. And I know that's sort of name dropping, but at the same time, that's how we find these experts, even though, we have one right here. So.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
I think I actually saw Chris Aviles as well, so I think I'm following him, and he's a good one to drop a name of.
Oh yeah, he's a great guy, very very knowledgeable about so many things. But gamification, he's definitely he's been my gamification godfather in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed you use Twitter hashtags a lot. Can you kind of talk about which hashtags you like to engage in, and how do you find the value in a hashtag?
Oh yeah, hashtags are great. I think that those are probably the best part of Twitter for me, because there's so much information that's automatically categorized. You know, anytime somebody uses a hashtag with that information, so many links, so many great discussions, things of that nature. Cyberman also has a hashtag page on his site. I don't remember that one off the top of my head, but um, but there's so many educational hashtags that are out there, and that's usually the first way. When I'm telling people about Twitter, that's one of the first things I tell them about the hashtags, because that's usually where people tend to see a lot of value in it. There are, I don't even know, there have to be like thousands upon thousands of different hashtags, and I'm sure hundreds of them are educational. So
they're evolving too. I think Sarah and Troy and I shared that we are all Google certified teachers prior to the show, which now they've changed to Google certified innovator, and there was a push to change all the hashtags along with that, and that threw me because I had to actually go look them up, and I still couldn't tell you off the top of my head. But that can be a problem, when something changes like that and you're still following the old version and you're not getting the kind of information you want because you're on the old hashtag. But usually, if you're in an ed chat, you're going to be on top of what's current anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah, similar to finding people to follow. When I'm finding people to follow, I notice some of the hashtags they're tagging in there, and then that's how I find the hashtags that I want to follow. Because sometimes they're odd. It doesn't make sense how they came up with their hashtag necessarily, or they left out a couple letters that you might have put in, and so some of them can be a little bit difficult to find. But you find those people that you like and see what they're following, and then follow those hashtags. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Sarah, as far as Edmatch goes then, so I'm going to go on and I'm going to fill out this Google form. What will happen next?
Depending on the information that's given, like if there's a Voxer handle, then as soon as I see it, I'll add the person to the Voxer group and the conversations can start. If the person drops a link to their blog, then we use Hootsuite and the RSS feed feature to auto retweet posts that have like an RSS feed attached to them. So I think like the WordPress, the Blogger, that kind of platform, it's pretty easy to retweet. And in addition, we will feature the person as the featured person of the day. Right now there's there's a little bit of a list, but we're burning through it though. So yeah. Yeah.
Great. That's kind of fun to say, hey, I was the featured person of the day.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's just because of the support and the willingness and the open-mindedness of educators all around the world to take part in the project. So that's really meant all the difference. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Sarah, is there any other way that people can get in touch with you as far as besides the site? So I want to make sure you reveal the Edmatch site again, but then also tell us how can we contact you or find you online?
Absolutely. So the Edmatch site is edumatch.education. We also have a blog, edumatch4education.com, and that's the number 4. And that is comprised pretty much entirely of guest blog posts from Edumatchers. So a lot of people, when they first start blogging, then a lot of people have used that guest blogging platform to kind of enter in the foray of blogging. So that's been a really cool tool. And for me personally, then my Twitter handle is @SarahTheTeacher, SarahDateechur. Crazy, I know. And let's see, my blog is sarahtheteacher.com, website sarahjanethomas.com. So.
Great. A lot of places to contact you. You might
Absolutely.
get some. They'll be like, I don't know if I want to be the person of the day.
Yeah. They can feel free to also, if they don't want to be the featured person of the day, but they would like to join our Voxer group, then they can just like send a message on Twitter or something. We are at edu_match. So they can just contact me directly, and I'll be happy to add them.
And I like how it's an active group too, because there's been other, and I won't mention specific websites, but there's been occasionally I'll get on a website and it says, oh, if you want to connect with other educators, and I'll put my name in and whatever, and then 6 months later I'll get an email saying, yeah, I'd like to participate in that project, and I'm like, well, it's done and past. I mean, it's so yours seems very active and very engaged, which is great, because when you want to connect, you want to connect. So.
Right. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Well, we thank you very much, Sarah, for being on I forgot to mention, 127th episode of the Flip Learning Remix podcast. And, hope to be talking to you on Twitter and probably Voxer here now.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all so much for having me.
All right. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.